Interested in getting into the Pokemon trading card game, specifically playing the game? If so, now is an amazing time to start playing and throwing down cards because the Pokemon Company is releasing two of the best pre-made decks ever in the Ice Rider Calyrex League Battle Deck and the Shadowrider Calyrex League Battle Deck. Which one should you get? I personally am going to get both, but if you've only got the budget for one, which one should you choose? By the way, my name is Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will go in detail on both of these decks and let you know which one you should pick if you only have to pick one. And also, I'm going to state up front here that if you want to see either of these decks in action, I've got videos made for both of them. As of the time of this recording, they're not out yet, but I do have all the cards, and I have put both of them to the test, and you can watch both of these videos through the links in the description. But all right, let's get back to it. Let's assume that you've watched these videos. Maybe you haven't, and that's fine too. And let's talk about what makes these decks special compared to some of the other pre-made deck options in the past, and break down each one specifically why you'd want to get one over the other. First off, these are play level 3 decks. And what makes these different, as part of the Sword and Shield era, Pokemon introduced the play level system. And level 1 is a deck like this Blastoise deck. And the difference here is that this only comes with one Pokemon V, too much energy, and some really basic trainer cards. They are, if you're looking to just get into the game and you just want to learn the basics, these are fine. However, if you want to transition to playing competitively online or playing PTCGO, you're not going to get very far with a deck like this. There are also League Battle decks. These are level 2 decks. And these ones, like this Urshifu one, is better than this level 1 deck because it comes with two Vs, 2 VMAXs, a more appropriate amount of energy, and much better trainer cards. That being said, the 2-2 line of VMAX is generally a bit short relative to what you would need to make this a truly competitive deck. And with each of the level 2 decks they've released so far, you're going to need to rejigger like half to 30 to 50% of the deck to make this truly competitive. Meanwhile, with these new level... There we go. With these level 3 decks, they come with 3 Vs, 3 VMAXs, which is amazing. And they also come with almost the perfect set of supporting Pokemon, energy, and trainer cards. If you wanted to play at a local tournament right now with just these decks out of the box, you can totally do that. If you want to play in PTCGO and just compete without having to worry about deck building, you can do that as well with just these decks as is. And so both of these very viable options. I have a ton of fun playing both of them. Now let's get into the Ice Rider deck. We'll talk about how that deck works, what makes it great, and what are the potential drawbacks of this package. And so the focus here with Ice Rider, of course, is Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. It has the amazing move Max Lance, where for just 2 water energy, does 10 damage, plus you can discard up to 2 energy in order to do 120 damage extra for each energy you discard. Therefore, if you discard 2 energy, you're doing 250 damage, which is absolutely insane. From there, you can use a card like Melony to reattach one of those energies. Then you use your regular attachment to then reload Max Lance on your next turn, hit for 250 damage again. That is an incredible number that's going to knock out all Pokemon Vs in one hit, and it's going to get you most of the way to knocking out a Pokemon V-Star. However, if you modify your League Battle deck with a Choice Belt, which gives you an extra 30 damage on Pokemon V, all of a sudden, a whole world of one-shot KOs opens up, as 280 damage off of a Max Lance is now capable of knocking out Arceus V-Star, Palkia V-Star. At the time of this recording, V-Stars max out at 280 HP, and Ice Rider Calyrex with a choice belt is going to be able to knock out every V-Star in one hit, which is absolutely insane. And going forward, it bodes really well for Ice Rider. There will probably be a time when V-Stars hit over 280, but if you're going to be able to one-shot V-Stars for the rest of Ice Rider's lifespan, it's going to make it an incredibly strong deck for as far as we can see. And what else is worth noting on the Ice Rider deck? It also comes with the Inteleon line, which is the Sobble, Drizzile, and Inteleon. And this, in particular, we want to focus on the ability Shady Dealings, where when you evolve up to Drizzile with Shady Dealings, you can use its Shady Dealings ability to grab one trainer card of your choice. So this can be items, this can be supporter cards, this can be supporters. And with the other Shady Dealings Inteleon, you can actually grab two trainer cards of your choice. This is the engine, the support engine of choice in competitive play. And I'm going to pull up the results, top 16 of the North American International Championships that recently happened at the time of this recording. And you look at this right-hand column here, this Inteleon symbolizes that Shady Dealings engine, and that's 13 of the top 16 decks were running the Shady Dealings line. And you're going to get that when you get the Ice Rider deck. So not only is Ice Rider in and of itself amazing, you are also getting the best support line in the game at the moment. And it makes for an incredible deck on its own. You know, just make sure to add some choice belts in there, maybe a tool jammer to stop Blissey with a cape. But generally speaking, this deck by itself is very well positioned in the meta. Maybe not as good as, say, Arceus or Palkia or anything like that, but it's going to be competitively viable for the foreseeable future. And even if you decide you don't want to play Ice Rider anymore, you can take the trainer cards, the energy, and the Inteleon line and pair it with other Pokemon, such as Palkia V-Star, Arceus V-Star. There are single prize variations that do very well in this format against bigger V and VMAX decks. And there's a lot of flexibility and deck building opportunities you can do with the Ice Rider deck beyond Ice Rider. And just a couple more points about Ice Rider specifically. It doesn't necessarily hit anything for weakness that is meta relevant. Fire is weak to water, but there aren't really any major fire threats in the game right now. And on the other hand, it doesn't necessarily get hit for weakness either. Metal type Pokemon have kind of slid into the background as Zacian V hasn't been as powerful. You might need to worry about Dialga here and there, but that's also there's other factors that if Dialga V works or doesn't, the weakness doesn't matter. So you're kind of just playing this straight up game where you're trying to brute force your way through matches, one-shotting Vs and V-Stars and doing really good damage on VMAXs as well. And so the Ice Rider deck is a fantastic choice for your first deck. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that the Shady Dealings engine is, and a larger portion of the cards in the deck are going to be rotating out. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole thing about rotation, but the general idea is that once a year, older cards get moved out of the standard format, and new cards, older cards are moved out of the standard format to keep the meta fresh. And the Ice Rider deck, between the two, has more cards that will be rotated out of the game in early 2023. As of the recording of this at the end of June, there's still at least 6 months, probably 7 months before rotation happens. And in the meantime, if you're getting this deck right away, you've got a lot of time to build all sorts of decks and dominate with the Shady Dealings engine and all of the support cards that are still in rotation. After that, though, you're going to have to find another way to make Ice Rider work. I've seen some people make Ice Rider Palkia decks, and they use Bidoof or Bibarel instead, and it's working pretty well. So you don't necessarily have to worry about getting rid of Ice Rider completely when rotation happens in early 2023. But it is something to keep in mind that when you get the Ice Rider deck, and if you're really focused on playing in Standard, that you're going to have to make more notable modifications in the near future than the Shadowrider deck. All right, let's go to the Shadowrider deck. And Shadowrider, when it first hit the scene, was an absolute terror thanks to its ability Underworld Door, which lets you attach an energy to a bench Pokemon and draw 2 cards. And when you have more Shadow Riders in play, you can do this ability over and over again and attach a whole bunch of energy and ultimately use the move Max Geist, which does 10 damage plus 30 more damage for each psychic energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Ice Rider Calyrex kind of has a hard cap. It starts at 250. You can add a choice belt to get to 280. You can put Hawlucha on the board for an extra 30 on VMAX Pokemon. You can use Leon to get even. It's a lot, right? There's a lot of factors a lot of work you have to do to get Ice Rider's damage up, which is already great to begin with. But if you're trying to hit like really big numbers, it's going to be really tricky to pull off. With Shadow Rider, it's built into the core strategy of the deck, so it's not unreasonable to think that you can pull off a one-hit KO on anything in the game. Absolutely possible with Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. Other things that I really like about the Shadow Rider deck is the inclusion of some really strong support Pokemon and secondary attackers. For example, this Galarian Articuno, when you put it on the board, you can use Cruel Charge to attach 2 energy from your hand to Articuno itself. You can use it to attack with Psy Laser, which lets you do 120 damage on any Pokemon in the active or the bench. Or you can just use it to charge up Max Geist to do even more damage. Great either way. Also, you get 3 copies of this Cresselia card, which turn 1 going second, you put this in the active, put 1 energy on it, and then it attaches 3 psychic energy to a Shadow Rider on the bench. All of a sudden, you've got a 4 energy start, which then helps you scale to those super big one-hit KOs even faster. And there are going to be times where Cresselia can use its move Photon Laser, which does 30 damage, plus if you've got at least 5 energy in play, does 90 more damage to hit for a total of 120. Sometimes 120 is enough to knock out a smaller single prize Pokemon or to land the finishing blow on a V-Star or VMAX. So its support lineup of Pokemon is pretty strong. You're also getting a Pumpkaboo to knock stadiums out of play, which is great. And some of the disadvantages, actually let's start with the advantages as well. Unlike the Ice Rider deck, this deck, as it's currently built, is less impacted by rotation. There are a couple of cards that are set to rotate out, such as Marnie and Great Ball, which isn't that great to begin with, Quick Ball, but it's not as impacted as much as the Ice Rider deck, where big chunks of it, such as the Sword and Shield Inteleon and the Sword and Shield Drizzile are rotating out. So if you're worried about rotation and having a pre-made deck last longer, then the Shadow Rider one is maybe something you'd want to consider over the Ice Rider. The big challenge with Ice Rider isn't necessarily Ice Rider. Well, it's kind of Ice Rider itself, but it has some glaring vulnerabilities that are exploited by the overall competitive scene as a whole. For example, the card Path to the Peak. And what this does is that it shuts off all abilities for Pokemon with rule boxes, such as Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. When this card, when Path to the Peak is in play, you can't use Underworld Door, which pretty much shuts off your ability to attach energy, draw cards. Very bad scene. You're going to get 3 training courts to help knock Path to the Peak out. You'll also get Pumpkaboo, which you can draw with a Quick Ball and then put it down to knock Path to the Peak out. But if Path to the Peak gets stuck at any point in your match, it's probably GG's for you. And unfortunately, Path to the Peak is such a popular card in competitive play that a lot of people run this card, and it's going to hurt Shadowrider a lot. The other big challenge with Shadowrider Calyrex is that the second turn can be, it's oftentimes a little too slow. If you can't get the right combination of cards, that first attack isn't necessarily strong enough to knock out a V in play, for example. If you can land that first big hit, that's amazing. But if you're doing less than that, which is often, it's kind of, it might be bad news. And with the pace of the game, it might be not enough. But the other big challenge is that Shadowrider Calyrex is a Psychic type Pokemon, which is the same type as Mew VMAX. And when Mew VMAX hit the scene at the end of 2021, it pretty much dominated the format because of how strong of a deck it was. And the entire meta warped around Mew, and lots of people started playing Dark type Pokemon to counter Mew. Unfortunately, all of those counters for Mew, actually pretty much all of them work even better on Shadowrider Calyrex, which just makes it weaker overall because the community at large is prepping for a better deck, and you don't necessarily have the same tools that Mew does to escape or overpower Dark type Pokemon. So generally speaking, you might have a harder time winning with the Shadowrider Calyrex deck as is, and not so much because the deck is weaker, but the meta as a whole is currently countering you by proxy harder than the Ice Rider deck. And what else did I put here? Another thing. At the time of this recording, and this is, I should have said this one at the beginning as far as benefits and reasons why you would pick the Shadowrider deck over the Ice Rider deck. Mewtwo V-Star. Again, at the time of this recording, the Pokemon Go cards aren't out just yet, but Mewtwo V-Star is a really interesting partner with Shadowrider, or an interesting substitution to Shadowrider, because it's got the move Psy-Purge, where it does 90 damage, and you can discard up to 3 energy from your Pokemon and do 90 damage for each card you discarded. So it maxes out at 270 damage, which is crazy. For only 2 energy on Mew, and then discard up to 3 energy from your other Pokemon. But you can, if you put it in the Shadowrider deck, you can use Shadowrider to accelerate that energy. You can also use Articuno to accelerate that energy. So whether you have Mewtwo V-Star as like a secondary attacker, or you build an entire deck around Mewtwo V-Star, Shadowrider makes a lot of sense if you are going down this particular route. So, which of these two decks should you get? I think if you're just starting out, if you've got the budget, ideally grab both. I think they're both incredibly strong and 2 of the best decks ever made. It gives you some options for what you want to play with, especially if you're playing online and you get bored of one, you can just switch to the other. And I do think both of them are capable enough to hold their own in the meta. However, if you have to pick one, I think you got to go with the Ice Rider. And the fact that, I hit the wrong button. Here we go. The fact that Ice Rider can hit for 280 damage with a choice belt for only 2 energy, and you hit that magic number of being able to KO Pokemon V-Stars on your second turn with only 2 energy is such a huge deal going forward. It's going to ramp up. It doesn't necessarily have as high of a damage cap as Shadowrider, but being able to hit 280 potentially on your second turn to start the game is absolutely massive and going to be an asset for the foreseeable future. So if you really have to you can only get one of these, or you're trying to prioritize which one you should get first, I would recommend the Ice Rider Calyrex because of that and because of Shady Dealings, but keep in mind that the Shady Dealings engine is rotating out much sooner than most of the key cards in the Shadowrider deck. Now, is there a reason to get? I mean, we covered some of the reasons for Shadowrider over Ice Rider. I think definitely if you're going to get one over the other, I would say get the Ice Rider one, but personally, I think Shadowrider is a little more fun to play. It's maybe a little easier to learn as well because you're not necessarily having to work with shady dealings and figure out which cards you have to play or which cards you have to pull. Competitive players love that, by the way, about shady dealings. This one's a little simpler. It's just more attach, draw, attach, draw, attach, draw, and then use whatever cards you have. So the learning curve on Shadowrider is a little shorter than on Ice Rider. And if you're looking to build other types of psychic decks, such as Mewtwo, such as Whimsicott might be an interesting partner for Shadowrider as well. And you're looking to build that type of psychic deck that isn't Mew, then that would be another reason to go with Shadowrider over Ice Rider. That being said, I would pick, if I had to pick one, I'm going with Ice Rider over Shadowrider, but I will be buying both. And again, if you're interested in seeing both of these decks in action, I will have links in the description to both my Ice Rider video and this is the Ice Rider video and the Shadowrider video in the description. And let me know your thoughts. If you've got the decks, because I'm assuming this video is going to live long after these come out. Which one did you end up getting? Are you happy with your purchase? What sort of upgrades did you make to the decks? Let me know in the comments. Again, my name is Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, where I post stuff all the time, give you updates on when I go live as well, because I also stream on Twitch over at twitch.tv/inthirdperson. And one last thing, if you go to my YouTube channel, if you go back to the channel, I do have a playlist of all of the Pokemon TCG decks I have played on stream and made videos for. So let me actually pull that back up right here. So if you get to my YouTube channel and you look, there's a section called Pokemon TCG decks. There are dozens of deck videos for decks that I have played and showcased in the entire time I've been playing the Pokemon TCG. So an excellent resource if you're looking to get into the game and build your own decks. All right, that's going to be it for me. My name is Jet, and I'll see you next time. Later.